Got no idea what was going on there. But now we've got sound. There we have it. Right. Let's just get amongst this. Okay. Hope everybody has finished with their chocolate binge and everything. There we go. We had a antivirus thing going. Go away. Stupid thing. Right. Can never trust your antivirus. Jumps in and does stuff when you least suspect it. Hey, everybody. Hope you had an interesting Easter break. Hope you didn't eat too much chocolate. Should I whisper that in case somebody feels a little bit ill? But hey, it has been a great time. It's interesting to have a bit of a break and relaxation and a bit of celebration, but what the heck? We actually survived. We didn't eat too much chocolate, and we did our best to further the environment that we're all involved in. So let's get amongst this. We've got a whole lot of information tonight. Got some quite startling history and a few things that are coming down the pike at us. We'll have a look at how we order metal, etc., and we'll give you an update on how the website's being updated. Everyone goes forward together. Please don't forget that. That is our tagline, and we mean it. So welcome, everybody. Once again, here we are on a golden Monday night. Let's have a look at our intro video. There we go. Quick little intro about what we do. Isn't it amazing that as time goes on, the building blocks that we chose have proven over and over to be the things that economies and monetary systems fall back on. Just a quick reminder, we're expressing our views as affiliates only. We do not represent the companies that we talk about or affiliate with, and we don't give financial advice. Now, if you want to get some financial advice, we're happy to put you in touch with a couple of financial advisors that we know. But, hey, what we're expressing here is what we've discovered and what we've done ourselves. Make sure that you understand that. Tonight, we're going to talk about one of our merchants. Not our normal list of sponsors, just one. BJS Urban and Equine Fencing Solutions. Now, this young man is not able to be on the call tonight because he's out at another one of our friendly sponsors. We shall remain quiet about that and not talk about what he's doing there, because here's an update from a magazine produced by a company that talks about modular walls and the type of things that Brad does. And he became Job of the Month. This is a national award. They built this wall around somebody's backyard and their pool. Looks very cool and just amazing that they pulled that off. Job of the Month. That's very cool, Brad. Well done. But here's the news. Here's the bit we want to talk about. Happy birthday, Mr. Seravalli. I know that he doesn't mind me saying that because it's on a number of public venues. Therefore, we can talk about it and not feel bad. Okay, moving right along, and we'll get him to come on and talk about that fencing job, I think, in the very near future. So let's have a look at what's going on in the world. Why are we here? We are a group of like-minded individuals focused on ensuring we survive the economic turmoil around us. Now, if you don't believe there's economic turmoil around us or that it's coming, you're in the wrong place. And by the way, you're probably smoking something. You cannot believe how incredibly difficult it has been to come up with some information that's not slanted. We are standing in between all of the commentators who think it's going to melt down and who think nothing's going to happen. But what I've discovered, it's making sure that you understand that most of the information we get from our government is incorrect. You just look at information around the Heineken flu, and it's astounding that it is so wrong. And what I find amazing is the governments, they promote this vaccine to us and then, oh, no, don't worry about that rumor about people dying. That's overrated. It didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, oh, we're stopping using that because people were dying. They don't even apologize. They don't feel bad. They pump this stuff into people's arms and lots of bad things have happened. I'm staggered that people line up still and want to get this injection. I'm being very careful on the words that I use because I don't want to have YouTube censor this video. Okay, so let's move along. This is a video that you need to pay attention to because we're talking about, and we'll talk more of it, about the Lbma inventories of the world. It is difficult to really get a firm grasp of it, but if you read between the lines and get multiple sources of information, you can see that a lot of what we're being fed is completely misleading.
This past week, the Central Bank of Hungary announced that it tripled its gold holdings in March 2021, going from 31.5 tons to 94.5 metric tons of official gold bullion reserves. You may recall on this SD Bullion channel, we covered in late 2019 how the Central Bank of Poland had pulled 100 metric tons of gold bullion from the Bank of England in various secure logistics-assisted overnight flights from London to Warsaw late that year. Throughout the entire 2010s, mainly Eastern nations such as Russia and China were large net buyers of official and unofficial gold bullion bars. Of late, that has been the same phenomenon, where Western gold ETFs such as GLD have been selling off, whereas nations like India have had massive gold imports. This week, the Polish central bank governor stated their intention to perhaps buy another 100 tons of gold in the coming years to further demonstrate the country's economic strength. In case you're wondering, a metric ton of gold is 32,150.7 troy ounces. It's valued at just over 56 million fiat Fed notes currently. Spot prices for silver and gold traded slightly upwards for the week. Gold-silver ratio again closed the week at 69. That's 3 weeks in a row. The London Bullion Market Association made news today, publishing a new record high volume of supposed silver underlying all the various ETFs and unclaimed silver bullion float custodianed in London. The claim made is that London increased its silver fractional reserve pile by over 124 million ounces in the month of March 2021. So just over 431 of this roughly 288,000 ounce silver bullion pile supposedly flowed into London in the last 31 days of time. For further perspective, imagine as if the entire COMEX registered supposedly deliverable silver pile equivalent poured into London vaults last month alone. And for another analogy on how unbelievable size this claim is, it's akin to just under the entire underlying PSOV silver bullion pile moving into London in, again, 1 month of time. All of it flowing into supposedly these individual or collective London 6 silver vaults. It was not but a few months ago when estimates were that London only had about 100 million ounces of silver bullion floating unclaimed by ETFs in the system. Apparently now, based on their not transparent claims, they have a little bit more breathing room, supposedly. Turning our attention to some of the latest hedge fund implosions and building tremors coming out of the highly leveraged US stock market, in the last 3 months, 3 different hedge funds have been destroyed: Archegos, Greensill, and Melvin Capital. Remember, this is happening with very low volatility and near new record nominal price highs for the S&P 500. The common denominator between all 3 of these hedge fund failures was the use of maximum leverage employed to maximize private gains provided by commercial, globally systematically important banks that can socialize losses if the bets go really wrong. So, heads they win, tails we lose. A big leverage provider that lost a lot in this latest failure of hedge fund, the Archegos bankruptcy, was Credit Suisse. That bank is apparently looking at a nearly 5 billion fiat Fed note loss on this trade gone wrong. Compare that loss sum to the bank's entire net income in 2020. This is not a small hit. Egon von Greyerz stated the following: Archegos shows that an unknown, smaller hedge fund can get credit lines of 30 billion or more that quickly leads to contagion and uncontrollable losses. Contagion was avoided this time with the banks taking all the losses, but that will not be the case next time. Pound time bomb. Silver bullion bull and bond market billionaire Scott Menard had the following to say about this worsening situation on Wall Street this decade on Bloomberg this past week. Have a listen.
We have all this risk and leverage built up in the system, which is not transparent. And so this really reminds me a lot of the days of, at the beginning of the Asian crisis, when we had large organizations or hedge funds like long-term capital that had excessive amounts of leverage, and out of the blue, there's a margin call, and in the course of that margin call, we get a hard sell-off. So I think for the market, that's the biggest risk probably over the next 3 to 6 months.
I do want to get your opinion on Archegos again, because do you see another Archegos situation happening out there, given really we've seen 3 major hiccups when it comes to leverage in the hedge fund system, family office system in the last 18 months or so?
I think it is highly likely that we are going to have another situation like that. These things, when they come, we're experiencing Sonali, where out of the blue you hear of some major loss somewhere, they tend to continue to cascade until the market corrects and flushes the risk out of the system. So, with the VIX now at levels we haven't seen in over a year, complacency is rising quite a bit. And I just see us as being very, very vulnerable to something coming out of the blue that nobody is really anticipating and can't be predicted.
Now, did you notice how he closed that? Things coming out of the blue that can't be predicted. That is scary. This Archegos hedge fund was started by one individual who created his own leveraged documents and sold them to banks. And they became the forerunner of a $5 billion collapse. Amazing. Now, the other thing that came out of that video was supposed stocks, supposed securities. Supposedly, a lot of these funds have physical assets. Well, let's look at some of that. Let's look at the silver market because that's been topical and just recently. So this is the Lbma London Silver Holdings. Now, they track sales of silver worldwide. If it's Lbma silver bullion, it's on this chart. Understand that. So let's look at April 2019 ETFs. They're electronically traded funds. So that's not real silver. That's just someone with a piece of paper that says, I'll give you some silver down the road. Not real silver, ETFs. So in April 2019, 34% of the silver sold or traded in the Lbma system was electronic funds, pieces of paper, not real silver. Make a note of that. Let's have a look at January 2021. ETFs are 70% of the silver traded in the world. 70%. So in all of that trading, there's actually no real silver. And you wonder why people say the market is rigged or the price is manipulated. It's got nothing to do with the metal. That's why when you buy silver or you buy gold, you pay a premium. Spot price is linked to the ETFs. So in January 2021, it was 70%. What does that tell you? There's less and less physical silver in the market. Okay? Now let's have a look at that. What if the amount of silver in the Lbma registered storage vaults is heavily overstated? What if they actually don't report the real number? What would that mean? Well, that means that 70% of silver holdings, being ETFs, is heavily understated. Think about that. That means that what they tell you is the ETF market, and I'm only talking about silver, but the same thing is happening in gold. I just picked on this because it was easy for me to follow a line of inquiry. 70% is heavily understated. Let's have a look at this. John Adams, he puts out a lot of information about precious metals. In the past 4 days, and this was a few days ago, 2 days ago actually, he'd been approached in writing by 2 other Australians who have offered similar information to that of Julie G. Silver. And what Julie G. Silver was talking about was that she had bought silver from Perth Mint, was paying for storage, and when she went to have it shipped to her, they didn't have the silver. So he's saying, I wonder if there's a pattern of behaviour. Now have a look down below that. He's re-quoted and said the plot thickens. Bullion Bank in Australia not delivering on secured stored metals. I've been paying for secure storage from ABC Bullion in Australia since September 2020. I requested delivery 2 weeks ago. They're now telling me they don't have it. What mint owns ABC Bullion? Now, let me think about that. Would that be Perth Mint? Yes, it would. What a coincidence. Perth Mint uses a lot of ETFs. Here's a quote. A lot of the mainstream media picked up on the silver story, calling it a short squeeze, which is misguided. The real story that is happening is a physical squeeze in the market, where it's really difficult to get stock, Feeney told Kitco News on Monday. It's a couple of days old, that quote. Here we are with John Adams again in a discussion with Beyond Mystic and Andy Scheckman. Andy was able to confirm that he has received his own independent stories about the saga involving the Perth Mint, and his reporting, John Adams, has been accurate and can be corroborated. So what we're seeing here is an organisation that's using ETFs to back its sales of metal. Very, very dangerous, because somewhere on that ETF, if the customer says, I want the metal, they have to deliver it. What a surprise. That's what's happening now. So how does it work? Okay, did a lot of research the last few days and found this interview. An official of the Perth Mint recently explained that no metal will be fabricated for certificates for metal with unallocated storage. Think about that. So if you've bought gold or silver from the Perth Mint and you're paying for them to store it as unallocated metal, you cannot get your metal. They've just said right there that they will not send it to you. You have a piece of paper. And yes, the fees are being charged and these people are paying it, and they are not getting the metal when they request it. Perth Mint uses ETFs. Very, very dangerous. At the same time, the Perth Mint is not now allowing customers to swap their certificates for unallocated storage for those in allocated storage, as could be done previously, which theoretically could still be redeemed for fabrication and delivery. So you used to be able to buy metal unallocated, convert it to allocated, and then convert it to metal. Guess what? They've just stopped people from doing that because they don't have the metal. They don't have the metal to deliver it. Who owns the Perth Mint? Well, it's operated by Goldcorp, the Mint's owner. And Goldcorp is a statutory authority of the government of Western Australia. Thus, they are immune from normal legal restraints. How would it be if any one of us on this call did that, sold a product with no intention of delivering it? Now, you can do all the ducking and weaving you like with off-balance sheet, on-balance sheet, all sorts of things about what you may or may not call it. But at the end of the day, these people have bought what they thought was metal and they can't get it delivered. That needs to be a fraud charge. Let's see what happens in the coming weeks, because I know that there's a lot of oversight on this, and let's hope that somebody pulls the trigger on a court action, because this is unacceptable. So welcome to AU4U and our digital platforms. We are here to help you become your own bank. Be your own bank. Have control of your own physical assets, your own metal, and your own digital assets. And as part of that, we're talking about our own token. Now, we're not here to launch a cryptocurrency that goes out and does an ICO and people trade it, et cetera, et cetera. We are creating a cryptocurrency that does a specific job. We have members in England. We have members in Ireland. We have members in America. How do we ship the gold to them? It's difficult. So we're creating a cryptocurrency that we can send to a bullion dealer near where that customer is, so that the bullion dealer gets paid and the customer walks in, picks up their gold. That's what it's designed to do. It's a payment method. Very, very different than us trying to transfer money to somebody in America, pay the current currency exchange fees, international transfer fees, etc., etc., etc. We're creating a token to do a specific job. Now, this is a little bit long, but I really wanted to put it in because it is so current. This is a brief history of money. Pay really close attention because this so impacts what we have today and the situation we're in.
Many countries around the world have, on paper, seemingly recovered from the economic collapse that occurred last year. Unemployment rates are getting closer to normal, the number of business bankruptcies has hit a 2-year low, and the stock market is at an all-time high. On the surface, this seems pretty good, but in reality, we are actually going through the biggest and scariest economic experiment in history. An experiment which could help bring us into a golden age of a new kind of economy, or it could bring us into a new dark age that the world has never seen before. In the 7th century in China, copper coins were used as the main currency for Chinese merchants. But these merchants at the time began running into a problem. You see, these coins were quite heavy, and a lot of them could be used for a single transaction. And that could be quite an inconvenience for merchants wanting to carry around these coins around a city. So to combat this problem, Chinese merchants came up with an idea. What if they just deposited these heavy coins with a person or business and receive a piece of paper called a promissory note or banknote in return? You see, this way the merchants would not have to carry around large amounts of heavy coins all day, and they could be safely stored at a single location. Win-win. And thus the primitive form of paper money and fiat currency was born. Later on, this was implemented throughout the entire currency system of China. And after a few centuries of using this new type of currency system, the Chinese government noticed something strange. You see, a copper shortage caused the government to issue more of these promissory notes and less copper coins. And during this time, the government saw a massive boost to its economy, allowing for the government to spend more on things like military and infrastructure. And so after noticing this, they ran an economic experiment that would become very important to what we are experiencing today. You see, the Chinese government declared that their new form of fiat or paper currency was considered a public monopoly owned solely by the government. So this allowed the ancient Chinese government to completely control its own currency for the first time. And for a couple hundred years, the government's ability to print money on command and control inflation worked pretty well. But little did they know, a global threat was emerging out of Central Asia that would change the course of history. A man named Temujin had recently united the Mongol tribes in the year 1206, and soon after became known as Genghis Khan. He soon launched the largest military conquest in human history, with his successors eventually taking over China and forming the Yuan dynasty in 1271. And during the Yuan dynasty, the newly formed Chinese Mongol government wanted to keep spending government money to further fund their conquests. But instead of limiting their spending or worrying about their government debt, they decided to just manufacture more and more paper money in order to fund their military campaigns. They figured that because they were the government and had a public monopoly on its currency, they could do whatever they wanted with little or no repercussions. So they essentially revamped their paper money, turned it into officially the world's first fiat currency, and started running their empire on a completely new economic theory. For a little while, it worked. But after years of war in Japan, Vietnam, Burma, and Java, and after years of ignoring debt and inflation, the economy of the Yuan dynasty began to collapse. Inflation rose to 80% in the early 1300s, there was a severe debt crisis, the population became impoverished within the span of about 5 years, and the government's theory on how printing money could solve their economic problems came crashing down. And it was this economic downfall combined with the government's inability to help its people after several natural disasters that led to the collapse of the Yuan dynasty in 1370. And now that brings us to today. You see, as we all know, governments from around the world have compiled record levels of debt in order to keep their economies afloat during this pandemic. They've also printed money at not only record levels for modern history, but levels that are very comparable to that of what the Yuan dynasty did in the early 1300s. And the reason why the governments are doing this is very similar. There was a big event which caused governments to spend a lot more money than they should and ignore debt. And so far, this strategy has worked, just like it did for the Yuan dynasty. And we haven't really seen any immediate impacts of having added 40% to the world's money supply within the last 13 months. And that leads us to what some are calling modern monetary theory. Now, I'm going to simplify this a ton, but essentially what some economists are saying is that as long as a country owns its currency as a public monopoly, which pretty much every country that has its own currency does, it can operate like a public monopoly and print as much money as necessary in order to avoid an economic collapse. In a sense, the government is no longer constrained by tax revenue or deficits. As long as it can print the right amount of money, it can avoid big economic hiccups. Now again, I should say modern monetary theory is a very complicated topic, and I simplified it to a great extent. But regardless, we are living through arguably the most dangerous economic experiment in history right now, and no one really knows it, and there are only two outcomes. One of which is that the money supply becomes tightly controlled by the world's governments, and the economies around the world adapt to this new monetary theory. And this has worked a few times. Think of Japan, think of Italy, countries that have tons of debt, yet never went through a true economic collapse. But another outcome is that this monetary experiment fails, and we enter a global economic collapse where currencies become essentially worthless. Now here is the big question. I mentioned earlier how 40% of the world's money supply was created within the last 13 months. Yet inflation has only increased from about 0.1% to just about 1.8%. So that brings up the question, why hasn't inflation gone through the roof already? Well, there are a few reasons, one of which is that inflation peaks during full employment and when businesses are allowed to operate at full capacity, and the world is just not at that point yet. I mean, there are still many places around the world that are still in hard lockdowns. But arguably the biggest and scariest reason is this. Something I talked about last year, which I call the Economic Waterfall. In a sense, every single economic collapse in history is not an event that occurs within a few weeks or months. It is usually a process that takes years, and then after several years, there is a dramatic and sharp drop-off of the waterfall. And there are a lot of prolific economists and investors that see our current economic trajectory as being similar to that of Germany in the 1920s. For example, Michael Burry, who has correctly predicted and profited off of the last three economic collapses during the tech bubble in the 90s, the financial crisis in 2008, and this pandemic, well, he has been ringing the warning bell for an inflation crisis since February this year. He essentially has been stating that inflation crises are typically preceded by an economic or stock market boom and a spike in overnight fortunes, and then eventually it is followed by civil unrest and then an increase in crime, a high cost of living, and ultimately poverty. And after saying that, one can't help but draw parallels to what's happening today with what happened to Germany in the 1920s. You see, immediately after World War I, Germany began printing more money to help pay for its government debts. After the first year, the German mark was relatively healthy. In fact, many citizens noticed that they had a little extra cash on hand and started investing in the stock market. A year later, we saw the German mark go through a high level of inflation, which caused a lot of economic problems, but the currency itself did not collapse and stayed relatively steady for another 2 years. But as debts piled up, more deficits were ignored, and more currency was created, The system finally began to break in 1922 and eventually caused severe hyperinflation and a complete economic collapse in 1923. Now let's think about that for a second. It took 5 years for Germany to experience an economic collapse after it started overprinting its currency. Now, I am not saying that we will go through the exact same predicament this time around, but we would be foolish to think that something like that is not a possibility at least. Here is something else to think about. There is a very real possibility that our generation may have lived through a golden age since the 1950s. An age where we went from having the average person in the world be in severe poverty with no electricity, a high disease burden, and a multitude of other things, to today where we have less than 6% of the world living in severe poverty, and the average person in the world has access to adequate electricity, hygiene, medical care, and a bunch of other things. I mean, we might look back at this year in the next several decades as the year that our golden age of economics ended, thanks to the collapse of a currency, similar to what happened to the Yuan dynasty, similar to what happened to the Roman Empire, and similar to what happened to Germany. Or we could just enter a new period like Japan, where we enter a lost decade where the economy doesn't collapse, but it still kind of chugs along with a new theory of economics. Or lastly, maybe this is the start of a new golden age, where modern monetary theory actually does work, and we are able to rewrite the rules of economics. But just know that at the end of the day, those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it.
How's that? Oh yeah, now we can hear. I have no idea what's going on with the internet tonight, but it's pretty ordinary. So the premise of that video was an entire history presentation of why the Chinese were the first people to create paper money, why their system collapsed and what it did. So we're going through the same issues today that they did. And I'd love you to have been able to see that, but it did not want to cooperate one bit. I don't know why. We will investigate. When I publish tonight's recording, I'll put the link to that video in the description. Chris? Okay. Just remember, you don't need to be a salesperson to succeed with Gold Rocks. We're here to help you be your own bank. Hold money in spendable assets, not paper or plastic, spendable assets. Our supplier history, the facility has a 60-year history of being a vault, 40-year history in bullion with no ETFs. What a surprise, shock, horror. Insurance is for full replacement value and is SMSF compliant, and the buyback price is based on the current spot price. Now, we've already had a number of people that have bought metal and then had a situation arise and they needed the money. They had the money back within a couple of days. We have a system that works. So pay attention when you go to buy metal somewhere. Customers, set up an account for free and save metal. Affiliates can earn gold for just being a member. Terms and conditions apply. The wallet that's coming very soon, our main man in New York, I thought he came down with COVID-19, so he had to go and get tested. And anyway, he doesn't have it, but he had a very bad flu for a week or so. You can convert everything from gold, silver, Bitcoin, cash. You can take your earnings or your member benefits in any way you like. That's what this business is about. Really simple. Get started, register, buy a voucher, start to acquire $100 of metal per month or more. Up to you. Share the value of metal with others and teach them how to start saving today. That's it. It's that simple. What a process. Here's a video about how to buy metal in the current system. I did it today with a bit of background noise, but let's see how we go. Okay, tonight we're going to have a quick run through on the website, how to drive it, how to order your metal. So here you can see I've got my username and my password already in the fields. Click the login button and it takes me immediately to my dashboard. Now there's a few things you can look at on your dashboard. Your e-wallet, mostly that will be commissions that you've earned. That's fiat currency. Your gold wallet, that's the amount of gold that I have in the system right now in this account. Silver, and the loyalty pool. There's nothing in the loyalty pool there because I haven't qualified yet. So you can see now that you've got personal PV, team points, etc., etc. Left and right carry are the points that have been joined in the last week in one leg or the other or both. You can see that my voucher has started to redeem already from my $200. So I've got $195.60 left in that account. You can see that, I don't know, these prices will be reasonably accurate, but we're going to get that updated so it's a live price. And you can see there's a number of other things down here. Ignore the whole team bonus. It is actually one of the bonuses, but it's not called the whole team bonus. We've got to get that modified. And we've also got the lifestyle reward. So you can see that I've got a little bit of a way to go to get to the first level. Further down here, you can see that there's earnings and expenses, level commission, rank commission, binary commission, all that sort of stuff is spelt out here. So all of your details are on that dashboard. Now, I'm going to buy some metal. So how do I do that? I go over here in the menu to the e-commerce store, click that, and it will open me a new tab at the place where I can shop. You can see my cart is empty, so I'm going to scroll down, and what do I want to buy today? Just for something different, why don't we buy some gold? Now this dollar amount function here is dollars, not grams. So whatever you put in there will be dollars. Add that to the cart. And now I've got $100 in my cart. Click on the cart and I want to check out. So now it verifies my address that I am who I am. At the moment, the only option for payment is bank transfer. So you can just agree to that. You can put a note in there. You've got to tick the button that you've read the terms and conditions. Continue. And there you'll see the details of your order. And there's the bank details to transfer the payment to. And once I've done that, I save a screenshot of that from my wallet, and we'll say that that's my receipt. So I double click on it, it will attach it, and then I click the upload button. Payment receipt uploaded successfully. So that's how you do it. Once you click the confirm order, that's a live order. I'm not going to do that tonight, but that's how you process an order. So let's go back and see what the wallet looks like when I order something. We'll click on the gold wallet and have a look in there. You can see that there's the first $100 that was redeemed from my voucher. So that's called instant gold. Then I've purchased gold. That's a $50 transaction. And then these are the little bits where it's redeeming from the voucher when someone processes a transaction. And it all adds up and comes together on your dashboard. So that's it for the moment. More videos coming soon. There we go. Before we move on, anyone got any questions about that? That was just a quick run through. We still got some tweaking to do on the website. Lots of things to talk about coming forward, but it's coming together really well. We have a number of new features that will be added in the coming weeks, and I'm really excited about where we're going with this. You start to listen to commentators about where the metal business is going, it's startling. Okay, I'll head off. Don't forget our shirts are in now, so if you'd like one of these shirts, they cost us $60, so you have to pay the postage on it, but let us know. We've got some in stock at the moment. Mr. Saravalli, who's off celebrating his birthday, I hope is wearing his new shirt. Lots of things going on there. Just remember, every week, the economic news gets worse and continues to do so. Don't panic, Jonesy. We got gold and silver, baby. We are here to talk about real physical gold and silver. Everyone goes forward together. Remember, that's our tagline, and we mean it. Thanks for coming. Is there any questions on what we've talked about tonight? We will have some great updates in the coming weeks and a number of new products coming in. We will have the coins in the website very soon. We're working on how we put that in and create member benefits with them. And we will have lots of metal stories for you in the next few weeks. So don't see any questions. No one's unmuted. So thanks everybody for coming tonight. Oh, here we go. Do we still send an email once we have bank money to buy gold? That would be a great idea, Jen. Was that pool gold you bought? Yes, it was, Martin. The difference in what we've got with our supplier compared to Perth Mint is our supplier is a private vault. They do not do ETFs. So in the event that we were to order gold that they didn't have, the gold transaction won't happen until you confirm that you've been notified. It will be a number of days before they can supply. We've already had it happen where they said, oops, don't have any of those bars in stock. It will take us 3 weeks to get them. Do you want to go ahead with the order? We do not do ETFs. It is physical metal. So we have a great system in place, really excited about where we're at, and we're looking forward to going forward with everybody and making an impact on the world. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. The UN Dynasty story is history repeating itself. Yes. Who would have thought? That's exactly right. I'm going to put the link to that story when I upload this recording. So I recommend everybody watch that video. It is confronting because it spells out exactly what we're doing today. And here we go again, history repeating itself. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing everybody on the golden beaches of the world.